Hand grinders are great for grinding just the amount of coffee that you need when you need it. But with so much choice, it's quite difficult to find the right grinder for you. What to think about in terms of budget, for your method, what kind of design, we're here to help. First thing to think about, and it is the most important, is what method of extraction you're going to be using. Because if you are an espresso drinker or if you prefer filter coffee, it's important to choose the right type of hand grinder that's adapted for your extraction method. Depending on how you're going to be using it, you'll need more or less grind settings, and the central axis of your grinder will need to be more or less stable. The axis is the central tube in your grinder, which is holding the bottom burr in place. And if it's properly held in place, it'll be stable and you'll have a nice regular grind. However, if it's not stable, it can move around, which will create irregularities in your grind size. Obviously, both of these things will have an impact on the price of your grinder, because more clicks there are on your grinder and better that the axis is held in place, the price will increase because it's more difficult to make. For espresso, you're going to need a lot of grind settings for the maximum amount of precision in your grind size, up to the point of some grinders being micrometric. The axis of your grinder also needs to be perfectly held in place so you have the minimum amount of irregularities. To help you out, brands will often say whether a grinder can be used for espresso. However, for pressurized filter baskets or dual wall espresso baskets, you don't really need to be that precise in your grind. For filter coffee, you don't really need to be as precise as espresso, unless of course you're trying to really be the master of your extraction like a barista. This means that you don't need so many grind settings, and the normed axis on your grinder will be enough. Obviously, how much you are going to spend is a very important thing when making your choice. Let's start with the cheaper grind. Now, most of the time, these are grinders that are using older technologies. The bodies are made out of plastic. The handles are really not very ergonomic. And for that price, you can't really get a fine enough grind for an espresso. Then from about £70 or €100, you start to have grinders that we say are superior. The bodies are often better material, plastic, glass, stainless steel, aluminium. It's from this point that you'll start to see grinders with handles that are much more ergonomic and start to have grinders that are able to do that espresso grind size. Then from about £150 or €200, you start to get grinders that are a bit more high level. These are grinders that have got lots of grind settings, lots of clicks, upwards of 40. You can even find some that are micrometric, so perfect precision for making a perfect espresso. Now on these ones, the materials are a bit more technical as well. You can find glass reservoirs, ceramic reservoirs, and polymer finishes as well. Now here are some settings that you need to think about. First of all, grind settings. A good grinder will need lots of grind settings, also called clicks, to choose the size of your grind. That's how you'll be able to find the right grind size for your extraction method and for your taste. Some grinders use a system of clicks to choose their grind settings, which is quite easy to find out where you are for a specific grind size and to find it again when you change beans. For espresso, however, where you really need a super precise grind size, micrometric would probably be better. Micrometric really lets you do tiny adjustments to the particle size, which is really important to get an espresso that's properly extracted and nice and balanced. Now let's talk about burrs. A coffee bean grinder has 2 burrs, and when turning against each other, they come and cut and crush the coffee beans to get the right grind size that you need. Now on a hand grinder, you don't really need to talk about longevity of the burrs, because realistically, the amount of beans that you are going to grind during the life of your grinder won't really blunt the burrs. However, the material that those burrs are made out of is important because it will determine the capacity of your hand grinder and how easy it is to grind. First of all, there's ceramic. Now, ceramic is generally quite cheap, but not very precise. Ceramic burrs are often quite sharp, but often put in on grinders where the central axis is badly held, which will generally make the grind quite difficult to do. Stainless steel is pretty much the modern standard. It's quite common and is really quite efficient. Hardened or treated steel is even more resistant and much sharper, and that'll give you a grind size which is much more regular. Better for espresso. Now, on hand grinders, you will find almost exclusively conical burrs. Now, it's because on conical burrs, it's gravity that is helping the grind fall through, which makes the action of grinding much easier. Because on flat burrs, it's the centrifugal force that's necessary to actually eject the grinds, and to have that with your hand is going to be quite difficult. Most hand grinders are a cylinder, and to use them you just need to take off the handle, put in your beans, put the handle back on, turn it to have your grind, which will fall into the little reservoir which is at the bottom. However, there are some exceptions, especially retro type grinders, which are much less portable. Now, grind jars can be made out of lots of different things: plastic, aluminium, stainless steel, glass, ceramic, and nowadays polymer as well. In terms of the arms, they can be straight, foldable, bent. What matters is that they're quite long. Handles also come in lots of different shapes and sizes: wooden, metal, plastic. Now, what's important is that it's comfortable in the palm of your hand. If it's too small, then you'll be grinding with your fingers, which will get annoying over time. So a nice big handle that fits properly into the palm of your hand is what's needed. Choosing the right hand grinder can be quite complicated, but as long as you understand your needs, you will be able to find the right one for you. By clearly defining your needs, you'll be better tooled up to make the right choice. Now, take the time to explore your options and invest in a grinder which will improve your coffee experience. If this video helped you make your choice, please let us know in the comments. Subscribe for even more coffee tool information. Until then, I will tell you, have a nice coffee.